I'm talking today with Dr Nicholas Harrigan from Macquarie University, and he's the lead researcher on Activity 7. So Nick, can we start with just a brief overview of what is Activity 7?
Okay, so Activity 7 is an impact assessment, and it's an assessment of the effectiveness of the intervention that's going to be planned for Activity 6.
And what phase is that at?
Well, Activity 7 depends on Activity 6, so the design of our intervention, and that depends on what we find in Activities 1 to 5. So there's quite a way to go before we'll actually be getting on the ground with Activity 7.
And what have you been learning from the project, say, over the last 12 months, which is sort of influencing that impact assessment?
Our project is designed to really broaden the scope of what we mean by the outputs of agricultural extension, the causes of good and bad agricultural extension, and also broadening the scope of how research around extension is done. So what that means in concrete is that in terms of outputs, we are interested in profit and productivity, but they're not the only things. We want to measure things like quality of life and development of networks and community. In terms of the sort of things that impact on extension, again, we're not just interested in transfer of technology or improvement in technique. We want to look at things like the social networks of farmers. We want to look at things like the way that norms are adopted. So looking at that as potential influences on developing, good extension improvements in agricultural practices. And we're also, I think one of the big things I've learned is that we're doing research differently. So we're adopting a participatory approach, really trying to involve the communities of northwestern Cambodia in the process of designing the research and designing the interventions that we're going to come up with, and really making everything so that it's centered around them, and it's an empowering process to go through.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
And what have been some of your highlights from your own contributions in the project?
One of the most rewarding ones was we've been doing teaching at the National University of Battambang, doing guest lecturing, and I designed a 3-part seminar series on an introduction to social network analysis, which is something that I've kind of been doing for the last 20 years. And that was really rewarding because there was a lot of master's students and also our research assistants from Cambodia who participated and really were just hungry for the sort of what we could share. So that was incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, great. And what's planned for the next 12 months for Activity 7?
To be honest, I'm not going to be doing any specific Activity 7 design until we've really got bedded down Activities 1 to 5 and then 6. But what I am doing is deeply involved in all Activities 1 to 5. So for Activity 1, I'm going through the 60 interviews we've got with Cambodian and international experts in extension, and I'm working on a paper there around a type of extension that is participatory and also scaled. Which is often a very difficult thing to do. It's hard to do extension and projects at scale while still involving people in those processes. So looking at how it's done, how you overcome some of the contradictions. With Activity 2, I'm heavily involved in helping develop a typology of farmers. So something I have experience in is developing typologies and taxonomies with statistical packages. And so I'm working on that. And we're hoping to develop sort of maybe a 6-farmer categorization of the main types of farmers there are in the region, which really helps, us design all the other parts of the project. I'm also involved in Activity 3, where we are designing we're trying to look at the networks of both human and non-human relationships that comprise the farm in northwestern Cambodia. And so again, I'm trying to bring my social network skills to the design and the implementation and then the analysis of all the fantastic data we're going to get from that.
Yeah, great. And finally, just to go back to Activity 7, what are you hoping to find out with the impact assessment?
My big hope is that we will find some effective ways to really improve the lives of the farmers of northwestern Cambodia. One of the things that anyone who gets to know these communities finds is that in lots of ways, these farmers are trapped by quite powerful forces. On one side, they don't have very big pieces of land, a lot of them. They have high input costs, they have uncertain weather, they have uncertain markets, they often have quite a bit of debt. And when you've got all of these forces arrayed against you, it's often very difficult to find a solution that makes an impact. And it would be my hope that we can in some way find some improvements that would make their lives better. We've been finding over the last year, as we talk to farmers, that some of the traditional methods of agricultural extension don't work quite as planned. So, for example, you think, like, a lot of extension is built around increasing the productivity of farms. And that sounds sensible, right? It increases the output, and when you've got more rice or more fruit, you can sell more on the market, you can make more money. What we're finding though is when you talk to farmers, a lot of them, to get those higher outputs, are having to take on a lot of risk. They're spending more on inputs like fertilizer, they're spending more on labor, and they are also going into debt to be able to finance that. And these things don't necessarily have good impacts. It depends. Some people are lucky, but others are not so lucky. They have the stress of the debt, and they also bear the risk if the crop fails or the markets don't pay the returns that they were expecting. So I guess we want to broaden our notion of what success really is for these farmers, and hopefully find methods of improving and extending agriculture in a way that takes account of some of these complexities.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much for your time today, Nick.
Cheers.